Gotcha. Now this is just more of like an open format. I think, especially just because we're all at different places with Math 180. Some people have been using it all year. Some people maybe like joined on halfway through. So I didn't want to kind of repeat any information that people already knew. So this is basically just a quick check-in. I will drop the attendance link in the chat because I want you guys to get credit for being here. Give me one moment. Let's see.
Can I just ask you though, what grades do you teach Math 184?
I am middle, which I think is kind of rare. I teach 6th through 8th. So
Okay.
I know a lot of people, a lot of the high schools teach it. I don't know too many of middle schools that use it, but I've been using it since this is my 3rd year using Math 180. Let me just get this. And then I also know that there's a lot of variation. I teach a complete like pull-out class. Like their Math 180 class is their math class. I know some high schools use Math 180 as an intervention class, and the students are still part of the Gen Ed math class as well. So it can look pretty different. This should be the attendance link. Let me know if it doesn't work.
Hello, how are you doing today?
Hey.
So my question is, this is my first time. So we were just, myself and Ms. Martin, she's also on here as well. We actually were just put onto Math 180 for our students. So I have no idea of like what I'm doing at all. So I wanted to know if you had like any like presentation or any visual that I could look at just to kind of get a better idea of like how to start the program altogether.
I don't have a
I'm actually in the
presentation.
same boat as him as well. I'm
Same
sorry.
boat.
I'm in the same boat as well.
That's good to know. So I had done, I think it was probably at the end of last year that I did one of these. And I think it just depends on the year. Like when I did like a beginner's presentation, people were like, oh, we've seen this. So it's really good to know that there's people that want like that more like structured format. Right now I could share my screen and we can kind of look at what it looks like on the teacher side. And we can kind of just answer questions like that. Have you guys given well, first I want to make sure I understand like the format of how your school is using Math 180. So is it its own curriculum or is it in addition to like the Gen Ed?
It's in his own curriculum.
Yeah.
Same for LinFest, it's its own.
Okay,
And
cool.
I had to do a lot of digging around myself and calling the curriculum company in Math 180 to fully understand. So whatever anyone can offer up is fine.
Yes. Okay.
I have a question. So this is my first year teaching. I'm at Harrity Williams. However, I don't know if I have access to the teacher menu. So it's kind of more so of me just creating my own lesson plan based off of the Math 180 lesson plan and finding worksheets that go with the lesson. That's kind of like how I teach my lesson, to oppose of just, hey, here's Math 180, this is our lesson plan, because I find that it was a day my kids had a substitute teacher like for a long time. And I literally just started, I want to say a month and a half ago. So it's like me incorporating like a lesson plan outside of the lesson plan that is assigned for that week. I need help with like the teacher's menu. I don't have any, I might have access to it. Again, my boss isn't like really educated on Math 180. So it's kind of like me having to, figure out things on my own. So if anybody have any type of insight, because right now I feel like I'm just kind of winging it. So if anybody have any insight, that would be great.
We've probably all been there. I've definitely been there. I feel like every year I kind of learn a little bit more, kind of find a way that it works for me. I definitely do what you do as well, where I will look at the lesson plan, and if I feel like maybe my students need more scaffolding or less scaffolding, I will like kind of create a lesson within a lesson, or say that they didn't, we do the lesson and they didn't get it. I'll kind of make my own lesson the next day to reinforce it. So I feel like you're definitely like on the right track in that sense, like making it your own. I feel like from like at least my supervisor has allowed, and like her supervisors have given me a lot of flexibility with that. Kind of using the curriculum, but also like using my best judgment with my students. I definitely this year started using like the actual book more. And I really like, so if you don't have this book, I want to make sure that you can get it. It's like the teaching guide. I really like it because it like gives you this, like it gives you the wording of the lesson, and that's kind of nice. That's something that I've been teaching math for 3 years now, but like especially as a new teacher, it was really helpful for me to be able to kind of see, like have examples of actually how to model this. So I definitely want to make sure that you get the book itself, because it's really nice in addition to like accessing the lessons online. I feel like there's so much more in the book.
Do any of y'all had a workbook?
I have the workbook, but I actually don't use it. I print like pages one at a time, but I've heard people use the workbook sometimes. Like last year, because like I said, I'm kind of flexible with the lessons that I do. So sometimes my students would kind of get confused if we would skip pages and like I'd have them on the wrong page. I like sometimes just to have my own printouts, or if I go off the lesson for a day, then they're confused. We're not in the workbook. But if you're like following the curriculum, I think the workbook's great.
I use the workbook here at LimFest, and I also use the projection of the teacher copy through the website, and then we like go over examples, and I let them kind of just work through the rest of it on their own and then check for understanding. So that has been very helpful because they can see it up on my board and they can also see it within their workbook. So that has been helpful going forward.
Yeah.
So I had the teacher, so I teach 7th through 12th. I had the teacher's guide for my high school, but I don't have the teacher's guide for the middle school.
I think it's the same curriculum, which is tricky, unless you're doing course 2 with your high school, which you might.
Okay.
Do you know if you're doing course 1 or course 2 with your older
I
kids?
believe I'm doing, well, the book says course 2, but I don't think the middle school's on course 2.
No, yeah, probably
Yeah.
mine definitely aren't. So yeah, you'll have 2 different books. So
Okay.
and that happened to me for whatever reason. I had like part 1 of course 1 and I was missing the second half, and they sent me one. I just like told my boss, and she helped me with that, and they just gave me another one so that I have all of it. Because there's like 2 parts to every course, I've noticed.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll definitely get you the book. But yeah, I do things similar. Like I'll go on to like this, like the Math 180, like the teacher slides. I'll pull those. Even with the video, sometimes I'll make like guided notes from that. So I'll take like screen grabs from it. Because I know like my students, if I'm just playing a video, they're not always like super engaged. But if they know they have notes to take during it, especially when it looks like the video they're watching, I found that to be really helpful to kind of introduce a lesson. Another thing that I just figured out this year is how to like access how are you guys, well, I should ask, how are you guys getting your assessments or giving your assessments? Do you make your own, or do you use Math 180?
Make my own, but I need help with putting it inside of the system, because my some of my kids doesn't have good handwriting, so I can't even make out what the answers are. So I'm trying to figure out a way that I can give out quizzes and tests on the computer.
Ooh, that's fancy. I mostly will I'll either print the Math 180 ones, or I'll make my own. I'm wondering if you could do like a Google Slide situation, where they can input their answers, or even like Google Forms, if you want them to be able to type as opposed to write. I know that there is a way to do the Math 180 tests online, because my first year here, we were like half virtual.
Okay.
So I definitely gave some tests on the computer, although like it was really hard to kind of monitor students like not rushing and actually like going through the question. The one benefit though is that it will read the question out loud. So if you have students with reading needs, as long as you want to use the Math 180 test, they can press play on everything. Yes, Corey.
Do y'all have Schoology like as an integration for the students? Because if you do, then you can just create this test on Schoology and then let them do it through Schoology.
Okay, so they actually let us create the test on Schoology, or do we just have to?
No, you can create the test on Schoology.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've gotten, like, since we've come back from virtual, I haven't used Schoology as much, just because I've been so happy to just be in the classroom and I can hand things out. But that's a great point, that you can definitely make the test on Schoology, especially, yeah, if you're making your own. I definitely suggest at least looking at the Math 180 test just to see what they were going to assess the students on. And like I said, if maybe, and we pace just like another, like just like a foundations class would pace, like it's your discretion. Sometimes like you're gonna like one lesson you're not gonna get to, or it's not as important to your unit. So of course, like if that Math 180 test is asking a question based off something that that you guys haven't gone over, you could take it out. You have that flexibility when you make your own tests. I just recommend looking at it at least. And there's a way to access it. Does everyone know how to access it on the Math 180 like portal? I just learned this year and it like kind of changed my life. Okay, so I'm gonna pull it up and then I'll share my screen. I'm really hoping my internet cooperates today. And when you, if I don't know if you guys use Clever, but your HMH, like your Math 180 should be accessible through Clever. I know in the beginning we used like a window icon, but I find it's just easiest to use Clever right now. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Hopefully it's the right. Oh, actually, I'm gonna share it after. So when you obviously you want to be on Sam Central for this stuff. Sam Web is really just changing people's lessons or like their blocks, or like maybe reassigning a diagnostic. Everything else needs to be on Sam Central. I'm gonna share my screen now. I sent mine to you. Yeah, no problem. All right, here we go. Okay, cool. So we're in here. So I just hit Sam Central. And so this is, you guys are already familiar probably with this dashboard. It's where you would see kind of your lesson for the day. What I do is I go over to class analytics. And then I scroll down. I mean, there's a lot of really useful information and we can definitely go back and look at some of this other stuff, but I go down to learning resources. And if you go to downloadables, over here. So I'm in course 1. So if you wanted to see for course 2, obviously you would just click course 2. But I go to resource type and you can see, first of all, the practice pages, which are like essentially the workbook just on the computer. So if you ever ran out of workbooks, or like say you didn't get new workbooks next year, there was some kind of lag with it, you could always go in here and print them. But I believe there's also the assessments here. And then so you would search. Let me know if this is working. And so you can go and see every assessment, like a PDF version of it. So I always recommend doing that. I try to do it when I'm organized, to open it up before I start teaching a lesson. I mean, before I start teaching like a unit, or they call it blocks. Just so I kind of know what the majority of the assessment's going to be on, how they're going to want the students to show that knowledge. And then again, you still have the flexibility to make your own test, but sometimes I will pull questions from this, like use their graphics and everything. And then I believe also the like checkpoints are on, I call them checkpoints because the students are like familiar with that language. What do they call it in Math 180? They're like strategy lessons or boost lessons. They're also available on here. I think they're with the practice pages. So yeah, this is, like I said, I kind of just found this year, but I found it really helpful. I believe, oh yeah, so these are, and again, you can use these as checkpoints, or if you have a student that's, like if you need to differentiate, the stretch are the harder lessons. So you could print out, like say you're giving most of your class the boost, which is supposed to kind of go back over a lesson and kind of check their understanding with it. The stretch is going to be a challenge. And they correlate to the topics. So there's, and within a block, it's like topic 1, topic 2, topic 3. That's ABC. Cool. Hopefully that was helpful. Does anybody have questions on that part? like I said, I'm kind of old fashioned. I kind of take a lot of things that's on the computer and print because I just am, again, just like so happy to be back in person, but also I just find it easier. Classroom management wise, it can be easier to have students working on paper as opposed to the computers because the computers can be more distracting. Does anybody have any other questions?
All right. So, is there any way you can check like their progress, such as like I have some students that act like they're doing work and they're just staring at the screen. So, how can I check their progress and what they're actually doing?
Okay, so there's two things. The easiest thing is to check their minutes. And that here, I'll share my screen again. So you still use the Sam Central. And let me go back to my home screen. When you go, and you're gonna still click class analytics. My minutes are gonna be lower this week than usual. We had some tough lessons that it just kind of ate into our program time, but you're gonna see it here. So this is for, it always defaults to today. But you could go yesterday, you could go this week. And so this, they can't really lie on this. It won't continue to count their minutes if they're not clicking. It'll kind of like give them like a message and then they'll have to log back in. So this is one way to hold students accountable to like actually spending time on the program. The one workaround you have to be careful with students, and I haven't seen this as much since we've been back in the building, but sometimes, let me see if, I think it's right here in the explore zone. If you start seeing all the students' minutes being in the explore zone, they're likely just watching the video over and over and over again. So that's just one thing to be aware of. I used to have a student, I'd be like, wow, her minutes are so high, but she's not been with the lesson. I'm so confused. It's because all of her time was watching the video.
Okay.
You know, there's a video, you got to watch the video once, and I even
Right.
see that when I like will circulate the room around the program. I'm like, hey, you've already watched that video. Like you can move on, like do the lesson, you know, do a problem. So that's one workaround, but otherwise the minutes are you can definitely count on those. And the other one that you might see, but I believe it cuts them off, is Brain Arcade.
Okay.
Shouldn't be more than 10 minutes in like a day. You know, if it's 5 minutes a day for the week, you might see like 20. But I believe it's supposed to cut kids off after a certain amount of time in the day for Brain Arcade. But yeah, the majority of the minutes should be happening in the Learn Zone and Success Zone. And you can always pull that. Every once in a while it will lag, but for the most part, it is accurate like within like a couple minutes. So like, you know, if the kids are on the program in class, I can be checking it and it's accurate. Like it doesn't take like a day or anything to upload.
Okay.
So
Thank you so
that,
much.
oh, no problem. And then the other thing is that you can see their progress on the zone. So I'm really proud of my kids this year. This is the slowest, like the class that's taken the most time. Like they've really taken their time on these lessons. I've definitely, it's not always been this way. I had some students last year that you would see a lot of like red or yellow. That basically means that they're like basically just like putting anything, guessing until it shows them the answer. So their accuracy is going to be a lot lower. But the green means basically that their accuracy in this lesson is high, which is great. So that's another way you can check their progress. Unfortunately, this is kind of as deep as you can go into it. Even when you kind of click in, it will just say like for the lessons themselves. Unfortunately, you can't see like 86%, but they can at the end of a lesson. So if you get your students to show you before they move on, I've like incentivized them completing a lesson, so they do like to show me, and then I can see there on their screen, hey, they got like 86% accuracy on this lesson, and I try to like really build them up. Sorry, the spell. Does that make sense? Okay. But yeah, I just and I've actually like already emailed Math 180 about this, like that I want to be able to pull my own report of their lesson accuracy. Right now it's not available, but they do add things. They've added things each year since I've been here. You know, I'm always encouraging them to add more, and like I encourage all to do the same, like email their support and let them know, hey, I'm looking for this. One thing that they've added is like students can now see like how much percent of a lesson they've done, and I think that's really helped my students like be motivated to actually complete the lesson. Like last year, students really had no idea how many more questions they were going to have to answer until they finished the lesson. So there wasn't as much motivation. But this year they can kind of see it's like a circle at the top. Oh, I'm like 67% complete. I'm almost there. Sorry about the bell. So they do add things. And that's something that I have asked for as well. Is like, hey, I want to be able to pull a report on their lesson accuracy for this topic. So
Question.
oh, your sound just cut out.
All right, sorry about that. So do you guys generally work on that same lesson for a whole week? Or do you do like a different lesson every 2 to 3 days? Because it takes me like about maybe like a week and a half for the kids to actually get it. So I just wanted to make sure I was on the right track with that.
How long are your classes and how many times do you see them?
All right, so one of my math periods, they have me for 2 blocks. And then the rest of the students that I teach, we literally only have them for one period.
Okay. And again, like everybody, I encourage everyone to share because you might do it differently. So I see my kids twice. And I like my live teaching lesson, I tend to spend like 1 to 2 days per lesson because some of them do build on each other. Or like it'll start with like a model and then it will like go on to showing them like the algorithm instead. Some days are like we had a really tough lesson this week. They're really struggling with like naming equivalent decimals. So we kind of did take all week to really stamp it. But more like usually I would say I spend like 1 to 2 days per lesson. On Math 180, it can take them at like 3 to 4 days to finish a lesson, but not always. If they're really getting it, sometimes they'll get it done in like 2 days. Our goal has been try to finish 2 lessons on Math 180 in like a week. That's if we have a full week of school, you know, no interruptions. So you can like use your best judgment. But I've just found like I said, like things build off of each other. And if I really see a skill that we're not getting and I know it's going to be on that's why I really recommend like looking ahead to the assessment. If I know it's going to be a skill that they're really going to need for the next block, I will go back and like reteach. But it just depends on kind of how you set up like your live teaching versus like the program, but it doesn't have to go like directly hand in hand. Like I can move on to a lesson and kids can still be on it on Math 180 finishing up that review. But I would love to hear other people's setups as well.
I mean, for me, I just I use an overhead projector. We go over the lesson, and then I create like a sheet for every lesson, a check-off sheet, like a check for understanding sheet. Like, do I understand this? Yes or no? Blah 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 blah. So when I walk around, I can just see what they understood and what they did. So like the sheet will have whatever I'm working on the overhead projector. It'll have that on there, but right next to it, I'll just put a box that I understand, yes or no. And then they can check the box off, no, they didn't understand. Because then if I get a lot of no's, then I know to go back. And if they did understand it, I get a yes. So that's a pretty easy way to check for understanding, especially if you built the rapport with the students where, they won't lie to you or whatever. The other thing, but I do want to ask is, how do you get your students to buy into doing the program? My students hate the computer part of it. They do not like the Math 180 interface. They absolutely abhor the interface. Like they like like I can get them to do iReady, I can get them to do iExcel, but I cannot for the life of me get them to do this with any kind of fidelity. Like they do not like the interface. So how am I to reconcile that part of it? Where because the computer they need some data on the actual program. And so how are we reconciling that if we don't, if they just hate the interface?
I can share because again, they had substitute teachers all year prior to me being here. So the substitute teacher just gave them the laptop and they were doing Math 180. So what I do is on Mondays, I incorporate a YouTube video on the actual lesson that we're doing. I also incorporate my own worksheet that I find. And then maybe like for instance, like my 2 block that I have, if we're doing a worksheet in the first block, that means the second block we have to spend on Math 180. Or if we're doing Math 180 in the first block, then we're doing a worksheet in the second one. So I try to incorporate my own worksheet and then try to have like a window. So whereas though I'm like, all right, so for the last 30 minutes of class, I need you guys to work in Math 180 and I'm going to be coming around checking on your progress. And I want everybody to have a 76 or higher. So I try to incorporate like we're doing work together on the worksheet where I have them coming up on a board doing things, and then the last 30 minutes doing Math 180. It's been beneficial, but they're over the laptops, like they're over Math 180. So I've just been trying to be a little bit more creative with.
It's not even the laptops. They don't like the Math 180 interface, like trying to
No.
manipulate the stuff and move. Like they hate it. And so, like the only time I can get them to do it is when I have them in small groups. Like I do small groups for about 15 minutes every class, where I work with students while they're doing because like my small groups were for struggling students before, and then I had to change that because like I would assign them independent time on Math 180, and no one would do the only time they would ever do it is when they're in a small group with me. And so I was, you answered my question, but like I need something because like that interface it's just bad. I don't know how else to say it. Like I get frustrated using the interface as an adult. So I can imagine their frustration as someone who doesn't, manipulate things well and then doesn't understand everything that they're looking at. So I was wondering if y'all had that same frustration from your students.
I've definitely seen that. Like I said, this year has been a little bit easier, but I do hear kids still would sometimes rather be on iReady. And so it's kind of like, what is what's different about iReady than Math 180? I definitely see kids getting like super frustrated with because they use that model. They have to like drag things. I think it would be really helpful, like if students in Math 180 had like wireless mouse. Like if we had mouses, like it doesn't even have to be wireless. Honestly, like we can be low tech with the cord. I don't think it would matter, but it is a lot of dragging and clicking, and I do like that it shows them the model and it makes it concrete, but it can be very frustrating, especially on a trackpad. So I think that's like something that maybe like we can kind of bring up just as a support to like the technology that we're using. The other thing is that I think has made a difference this year is kids actually completing a lesson. What I've found is that like especially in the past, basically if you don't answer like maybe 3 questions, when you log back on, it's gonna be the same question that you just like that you've already done. So I think it's like finding this sweet spot of enough time, right, on the program so they can get past. It's almost like that checkpoint, so that when they log back in, they don't see the same exact problem. But then again, like, not being so long, like I know a lot of our kids, I think they're on computers so much, like, especially if they're in another intervention program for reading, they're going to be using their computers for reading. So yeah, I think it's kind of a combination of finding that sweet spot, like, them understanding that I can move through this lesson. I'm not going to keep doing the same problem over and over again. Another thing, I've tried some incentives like, I have like a chart where I track their lesson completion. If you want to track their minutes instead, I used to track minutes. I think I used to give like an incentive for the highest minutes each week, like, maybe they get to sit in, like, a preferred chair, preferred, like, area of the room. I have, like, one of those, like, bouncy chairs kind of, so, like, they love to do their minutes on theirs, like, but they had to have the most minutes. The only problem with that is, like, I had one kid that he was that kid every week, like, he beat them out every time, so yeah, I think definitely incentives are gonna help, especially because if they have a program they like better, but unfortunately, like, that's not the program that we get to use for them, so but I really am interested in, like, why do students prefer iReady, and I, again, like, encourage everyone to, like, give Math 180 your feedback. They do like I said, they have changed it every year, just, like, a little bit. Um
I did want to piggyback off of what you said. I did find that the students do like need a mouse or something to help manipulate better. One of my lowest students who really just struggles with a lot of different things, I started like unplugging my wireless mouse and letting him use that. And he's been able to progress through lessons a lot more, encouraging them to use that microphone and giving them headphones. They love headphones. And what else do we do? Also just like shouting them out, like, hey, I see you move from lesson 2, you're now on lesson 3. And they now it's competitive. That they want to be like, okay, I want to move out. And then utilizing that brain scan assessment where they can move from different levels. So that's also been a thing in my classroom where I'm like, okay, we're gonna take the brain scan, and now they're like, okay, but can I take it again and see if I can move from this block to this block? But you have to have your lessons done for, that time before I give it again. So it's been kind of like a competitive thing on that end. And that was a lot of trial and error as well, just trying to get them to really buy in. And then I have high school. So I know that you have middle school. It's probably easier to get them to buy in a lot, quicker or faster. But with my high school students, it's a lot of like, just praising and shout outs and, oh, I'm gonna buy lunch for this if you move from this block to this block. It doesn't always have to be like a huge, leap or a huge thing. But if you can get from block 1, lesson 2 to block 1, lesson 3 by the end of the week, I'll buy you lunch. Like anything small, they love. Yeah.
All right, I'll send some feedback to to Math 180. Like they're
Now
in
also, oh sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
also learned that if you don't press log out, it also repeats the lesson. Like every time they log in, it's going to go all the way back to the beginning of that lesson. I learned that from calling Math 180 myself, because they will always be like, I'm getting the same questions. And they said if they don't hit that log out button, it restarts it all the way from the beginning. So they might be struggling with that as well.
That's a good thing to know. Interface is still trash though. I'm gonna keep it 1,000. I love the lesson parts of it, like how they teach it, and how they give you everything, the M skills and all of that stuff. But the actual computer interface, I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. But thank you for the feedback, everyone.
And this has been so great. I really just appreciate hearing from everybody because, like I said, I'm one person that teaches it one way, but I'm learning things from y'all. Like, I didn't know about the log out situation, so I'm definitely gonna make sure my students are pressing log out because, yeah, it can feel very frustrating, and I really do think that would be part of my students' frustration in previous years. Like, they weren't spending enough time on it or, answering enough questions. They were just getting so stuck. There is a way, to move students to the next block if it fits your, instruction. I know teachers who start students at block 1, because that's where the diagnostic has put them, and they have them work through at their own pace, the whole year. I have found sorry, I like to move my students along with me as I'm teaching. So there is a way to do that if you guys are interested. All right. Does anybody have any other questions that haven't been answered? Anything they want me to share my screen for? Cool. I'm gonna keep this open in case anybody like thinks of a question. I'll be here till, is it 2? I don't know. I'll be here for the remainder of the PD. But you know, feel free to pop into others, or like I said, I'm gonna leave this Zoom open. I'm just gonna mute myself. But if you have any more questions, feel free to pop back on. Send me a private chat, anything you guys need. And like I said, thank you so much, because I feel like this was like a really great like brainstorming session, and